initially, the idea was pretty much what it looked like. Let's take a group of Victorian adventurers and put them together in this rip-roaring, swashbuckling period adventure. So we chose our 5 or 6 favourite Victorian adventurers. When we looked at Captain Nemo, we discovered that actually he didn't look anything like James Mason in the Walt Disney versions, that in Jules Verne's original novel, or at least by the time Jules Verne had written The Mysterious Island, which was 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea sequel, he'd decided that Nemo was an Indian prince, Prince Dakar, which I'd never realised before. And it suddenly gave a completely new vision of Captain Nemo and of the Nautilus. Me and Kevin had a great deal of fun working in Indian design into the Nautilus so we could have that marvellous dancing Shiva steering wheel that Kevin came up with. When it came to characters like Griffin, the Invisible Man, again, we went back to the originals and then extrapolated from them. In the original Invisible Man, Griffin's a psychopath. He has got megalomaniac delusions of ruling the world, which throughout the first book, we don't make Griffin a very pleasant character. And by the second book, he's palled up with the Martians, which I figured was natural because they were both written by the same bloke. He's palled up with the Martians in the hope that this will give him supremacy over the world. In fact, as we went on with the series, I began to become very, very fond of Mr. Hyde. I think that is one of the best bits of characterisation that I've done lately. Because I started to find him kind of admirable in that he actually understands the situation. He knows that he's a monster. That's just what he is. He's not lying about anything. He's being completely honest and straightforward. In some ways, he's got a much clearer grasp of the situation and a much more honourable set of intentions than Jekyll had. So, yeah, you know, there was something... After a little bit of thought about each of these characters, there was elements that started to come forward. H. Rider Haggard makes Quatermain a very practical man who is not keen to be killed or injured. Most of the violence in King Solomon's Mines is meted out by his native friend Unslopogus. And also, Alan does have a predilection for drug abuse. There are a number of H. Rider Haggard stories where he takes this mysterious drug called Taduki, which enables him to travel into past incarnations. So, if the source of Taduki had dried up, it didn't seem to me inconceivable that Alan Quatermain might wander into opium addiction and be found half dead in some drug den in Cairo. Kevin can be relied upon to take my most extreme ideas and upsetting 2 or 3 stages further, which is what makes him such a delight to work with.
Okay, this is Edward Hyde, Mr. Hyde from League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. He's 99% animal, really 1% human or humanity. The idea of our version of Hyde is he's changed from Jekyll into Hyde so often that his skin is beginning to tear apart on his face.
When I first came across Kevin's work, which was in 2000 AD, back in the late 70s, and I was immediately attracted to it. And after a while of reading that particular comic, I started to get the impression that Kevin's style had been kind of ghettoised, that there was a kind of received wisdom around Kevin's work that, oh yeah, he's a great artist, but only on cartoony, funny stuff and only on robots or aliens. For God's sake, don't give him a normal human being to draw because he's not up to it, which I didn't actually think was true. And I could always see in Kevin just this incredible flair for the grotesque that seemed to me to go back to the great British caricaturists and political satirists like Gilray and Hogarth. I thought that Kevin was probably in that class, in his willingness to go in for wild exaggerations, in the stylishness of the way his art looked.
Even though the book appears in full colour, I like to use a lot of line work to try and give the impression of a Victorian pen and ink drawing. I think it sort of sets us back nicely in period. Edward Hyde's incredibly hairy.
Once I'd had the idea of Kevin O'Neill drawing the League, I simply couldn't see anything else that would have that humour, that intensity, that sense of exaggeration, that stylishness. You know, he was the only artist for the book. And I think he was a bit surprised to start with, because he was being called upon to draw things that he hadn't been called upon to draw much before. But once something clicked, then he was off and running. And I think that the material that, I mean, I know I would think this because I have a vested interest, but I genuinely do think that the material that Kevin has done on the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is the best material that he's ever done.